let me flip to the next slide. This is just highlighting the practicals. As I said, the more videos, the merrier. So we're asking volunteer panelists and we're welcoming you in. And thank you, Jack, Christopher, and Job to do there. We will make it interactive for everybody by jumping over into Mentimeter. That is something that we do for today, but it's also very much because it is part of one of the ways that we can get this Bowtie Dialogue Kit out to you in a corona-stricken ways. So it has a need for us today, but it is also part of how we actually do it with clients right now. So we are going to ask you to keep a secondary browser window or maybe your smartphone ready, not for calls and emails, but to help us on the interactiveness of this presentation as we get a little bit further into it. Again, it's most for to show their practice, also to get to know each other. And then with a little bit of luck, it should also give you an insight as to the power of that way of working. So those are the seminar practicals. This is the agenda of today. Some of you have perhaps just booked out an hour, but in fact, the invitation was for 90 minutes. We're going to stick with 90 minutes. The 90 minutes will take us up to the break. In that time, we will have covered the principles of Bowtie, eloquently summarized in just a few interactive slides by Lisbeth, okay? Just to make sure that we're all on the same page and we know where we're coming from and what our objectives are in terms of understanding risk through this perspective. Then I will bring about the reasons for creating a board game-like dialogue kit. It's not a game. I'll repeat that many times, and if I don't, Lisbeth will hit me over the virtual chins and make sure that I include it, because it really is not a game. It is more than a game. But there is a reason for that way of engaging in this particular kind of dialogue. And then Lisbeth will take us back into some live view from clients and some of those comments that they've had as they experience this real world edition of the Bowtie Dialogue Kit. Then we'll have a break, and then we'll look at what we can do in these corona times, meaning that we have a light online version that you can roll out either alone or with us very, very quickly with pre-chosen discussions. There's also a fully simulated environment where we can actually take on almost any kind of challenge as it relates to dealing with and managing risk. And we also, of course, have the online boxes where these things are ready to go out the door, and you can grab them online right now. We will try to have ample time for questions as we go along. As Lisbeth said, it would be nice of you if you will just use the chat window. So if you can find the chat panel, I'm just going to say hello and welcome there. That should allow you to see it if I send it out to all attendees as well. So hello and welcome.
Yeah. While you're typing, I can mention that you do have the option of just sending it to Ulrich. Well, now you're all panelists, so actually everyone's going to see it.
I just made that realization as well. Absolutely. So we have that way of engaging. Also, again, feel free to unmute your microphone. If Lisbeth and I know that we will cover that question later in the webinar, we will park it and pick it up later on, but please feel free. So reasons for Bowtie, for game, experience from clients, and then 3 ways of getting it into your hands. With that being said, I think we should probably get started. And on that note, we'll just do a brief introduction. So Lisbeth, why don't you go first?
Yes, thank you, Ulrich, and welcome also all from my side. I have been an independent consultant for the last 12 years with a background in oil and gas. And as a consultant, I'm now an expert in working with risk management in the preventive side and from the reactive side, meaning with risk assessment and incident analysis. And I use the barrier-based family of methodologies for this. I think that's it for now. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. A short word about myself. I have for about 20 years helped leaders make better decisions, in particular in complicated environments such as offshore, military and industry installations. It is very much the difference between good intentions and real world behavior that is my interest, okay? Sometimes it's for smaller executive teams who are in charge or the spearhead of a cultural change. Sometimes it is for teams out there actually getting the work done, perhaps in a joint venture of a large offshore project and stuff like that. But the interest there really is the human factor as it applies into the way that we behave together and how we make decisions together. One of my proudest projects right now is actually helping the Johnson & Johnson family to prioritize, which is one of the reasons why we may have a working coronavirus in the not too distant future, okay? Not by me, but by good decisions. Question and answers on that kind of stuff later on. I should also mention that we have CGI Risk here. That is the software company that really has systemized and created the infrastructure around collecting data and working structured with barrier-based risk management. I can't claim, but Lisbeth can, to be a true partner of the organization, helping them to help their clients around the world. And it is important that we are here because they have seen, tried, worked with our kit and found that very much worth sharing. So one way or another, we are here today, maybe because you saw their newsletters, maybe it's because you saw Lisbeth's, but regardless, thank you very much for coming, okay? With that being said, we also want to know a little bit about you, and this is where it starts to get to be interactive, okay? So I'm actually going to stop this presentation in PowerPoint, and I'm going to move over into a browser, and that should be coming up in front of you right around here, okay? So are you now seeing Jack and Joe, are you seeing sort of a blue screen where it says, welcome to the BDK again? Okay,
yep.
Excellent. Yep. Now, I'm going to flip on here a QR code, okay? So that should come up in front of you right now. You can either take your smartphone and its ability to scan, hold that up and scan the QR code, or you can go to menti.com and type in the code 2805348 or 2805348 as the code to come in. And the trick is that we're going to ask you some questions. We're going to give you some opportunity to present yourself, but it is nicer if we can do it this way. It works good for 2 people. It works good for 600 people. So that's the route that we have chosen to go. As you come in, you'll see on your screen an opportunity to click on a little heart and a thumbs up. And if I can ask you to click on that on your browser or click on that on your smartphone, that would be nice. You can see on my screen that it now went from 3 thumbs up or 2 thumbs up, and here comes a heart as well. And that indicates that some of you have come in, okay? That is very nice. I'll bring it up once again. If you haven't gotten the code yet, it comes up here with a QR code. Go to menti.com, type in the code, and there you can actually participate, okay? As I said, it's because we also use this technology in the Lite version of the deployment. So that's why this here is very important for you guys to become familiar with. You should now see 2 screens. And when Lisbeth and I are talking about looking up and looking down, when we ask you to look up, that means that we'd like for you to look at the screen that I am sharing. When you look down, you look into your own browser window or you look into your smartphone, and that's where you can make it a little bit interactive, okay? So you should be able to jump in there right now and again, hit the sort of like the hearts and the love, and that way you should be able to indicate to me that you are on the right page and you're doing exactly that. Sometimes we get questions like, why in the world is there a cat in there? And we have yet to figure out what it does, but you can still click on it, okay? It's a way of collecting understanding of the people who are in the group. And I see a new attendee had just joined us, so Heidi Besta. If I can ask you again to go to menti.com 2805348, or on this shared screen, click on the QR code. That should bring you into Mentimeter where we're having a little bit of an interaction, okay? With that being said, here is the next question. How do you get to the office? Notice that if you look down, you can now select an item, you click on it, on the little circle next to it, and hit submit. And as you do so, you can look up and see that the chart changes as we actually update each other, okay? Again, I'm not terribly interested in how you get to work, but it is important for Lisbeth and I just to make sure that we have the tools available when we need them a little bit later, okay? So I see that it works for 5 of you, 6 of you have now voted, 7 of you have now voted out of 7 panelists. That is very good. I do appreciate it, okay? So it seems like the technology is working for us. Nice number of bikers here, really appreciate it, okay? Nobody by boat, not a big surprise. Cool. Here it becomes for real. If I can ask you just to type in, again, look down and type in your name, your role, and perhaps from which part of the world that you're coming in, then we will see how that comes up here. So type in your name and your role. And perhaps where you are from, and hit submit. And as you do so, you can see this comes in. Okay, Heidi, last to arrive, first to get it up there. Thank you very much. Actually, that happened so fast, and I'm going to ask you to join the rest of the group as a panelist. So if you choose, you can jump in and put your camera on there as well. It's not a requirement, but should you choose, you're more than welcome. Excellent. So you can see here we have from Denmark, Aarhus, Heidi's coming in from Denmark as well. Marcin is coming in from Copenhagen. Jack is from the UK. And if I'm not completely mistaken, then Job would be coming in from Holland. Excellent. In question about what is my role, if you don't know that by yet, I would suggest that we look into that at the Q&A at the end, because else we may lose a little bit of time. Okay, cool. But thank you. This here is, again, one of the ways that we facilitate people gathering around a flip and exchanging information in a virtual environment. And you'll see that becomes important a little bit later. For now, just thank you very much. Nice to see quite a few guys and ladies and gentlemen from Denmark, but also reaching out into England and Holland. Thank you very much for jumping in. All right. Time is flying, so I will return to the normal slides. So allow me just a quick shift back into the PowerPoint. We should be coming up there, okay? And again, Jack and Christopher, are we back into the slides now?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Kind of you to keep me posted. All right. So to be very clear, today we're going to show you a proven process. Lisbeth and I have worked together for many years. We have a meaningful dialogue about safety that engages the stakeholder. This has been bottled into or packaged into a box. That's the one I keep dragging in here. And it is now a finished dialogue kit. And our intention was to travel the world with this from the spring of 2020. Fabulous planning, right? So we had to make this package available in a different version. There is a robust case for the on-site thing, but there's also a light version online, and there's a deep simulation available online. So we have the material, it is available, but not just in its physical format, but it's also available in 2 digital formats. And we will show you some videos of the live deployments, the ones that we managed to get in before Corona shut us down. And we will show you a live demo from around 2 o'clock and onwards in terms of how the process could look there, okay? So, any questions right now? Anything you need to know before we continue? You can just leave your microphones unmuted, and then we can pick them up right now. If not, we will rush right ahead. Christopher, Jack, good to go? Yep. Excellent. So, returning to the agenda, let's start off with the principles of the bow tie, just making sure that we're on the same page. And for that, I will hand over the baton to Lisbeth. You should now be able to grab my mouse and run that through and have that in the window here.
Thank you, Ulrik, and to all you participants. I know that some of you are very much experts in bow tie methodology, and some of you might only I know that some of you are only briefly familiar with it. Experience says that we know about it's there, but what's it really about? So I'm going to give you a brief introduction. Also because we want to relate this back to that the Bowtie Dialogue Kit has a solid foundation in the Bowtie risk assessment methodology. The board may look generic, but it's actually based on a solid risk assessment that we did to produce this over several projects. First of all, why is it called the bow tie methodology? Because it looks like a bow tie once it's there. So that's the nice drawing that Ulrik made here. The principles of it is that, let me see if I can, on the left side, we list all the threats that may affect our control of, in this case that we're going to look at, of our control of the car. And on the right side, we list the potential consequences if we do lose control of the car. The thing is, we do risk assessments all the time. We do it even just by getting out of the bed in the morning. So there are inherent risks in everything we do. And we do it all the time at home and at work. So this is the structured way of doing it. When we look at it with this methodology, we can list, we start looking at here. If we were to list the threats here on the left side, we would in general look at it in categories of what are the threats related to here, for example, the driver, so myself or the people actually doing the work. What are the threats coming from others in the surroundings? What are the threats coming from the techniques involved here, the car? Is the car maintained properly? And also threats coming from the environment that we're in. So here it would be road conditions, for example, or is it light or dark or something like that. And on the right side, we would have the consequences, which would be in general in categories of what can happen to me or the people involved in the work, what can happen to people around us, what can happen to the environment, what can happen to the assets that are involved. So here the car. So if we list this, I'm having a little delay in the response to my mouse. Yeah. So here we have examples of threats which would be intoxicated driving or driver loss of attention. Snow on the roads is the environment. Unexpected maneuver from other drivers would also be one of the examples I mentioned from people around us. And blowout of a tire is an example of some technical stuff that is a threat if it actually is activated. And on the right side, you'd have crash into other vehicles or hit someone else, like the pedestrians or cyclists, or driver impact internally of the vehicle. So I could be damaged by something inside the vehicle, or I could roll over. We could expand this to say we could lose the car completely or at least damage it. And we can also just get delayed to where we're going, which you'd recognize from a project. For example, delays are, I know you're familiar with that from, for example, wind farm projects. You're very sensitive to delays. So it's all gathered around the loss of control in the middle here. So now you see the similarity with the bow tie, I think, because we would then start talking about how can we prevent, for example, intoxicated driving from turning into loss of control and then eventually resulting in that we might hit a pedestrian or a cyclist or some of the other potential consequences. That's where we start talking about the barriers. And on the one side, you'd have the control barriers or the preventive barriers on the right side. And then we talk about the recovery barriers on the left side. And very often when we start talking first time with teams or organizations about the bow tie methodology, it's surprising to realize how much we can actually do before we even get in the car, because before we even start the work. So the recovery barriers are very important here to start working on, and also realizing how much we already do, how much we've already described in our procedures that we do to prevent loss of control. So we have also some examples here for, let me see, for the car example you'll recognize here. some barriers, here the control barriers and the recovery barriers. And examples would be periodical medical examination of a driver to prevent that we have release of this threat, the intoxicated driving, resulting in loss of control. We have some cars would have like a hard barrier, which would be a breath control device inside the car before you can even start it. And you have a more soft barrier, like agree on a designated driver if you're out for a dinner in town or with friends. Which is the next point here, that the barriers in a bow tie analysis can be both hard barriers, like physical barriers, like the brake systems, or they can be more soft barriers related to behavior. So this allows you to talk about the hard barriers and the soft barriers at the same time, which is important. And soft barriers would be like slip recovery driving as a recovery barrier, or defensive driving as the control barrier or preventive barrier. And it's also important to see and notice that a barrier can work for many different threats, or many or reduce or even prevent many more of the potential consequences. So that's the fundamentals of the bow tie methodology and how we work it. And these are the fundamental terms that we use when we talk about the bow tie methodology. So there would be the threats and the preventive barriers that would hope, or that we plan to use or plan for to prevent loss of control. And if we do lose control, we have the recovery barriers, which will reduce or even mitigate sometimes the consequences that we can foresee could happen. Again, mentioning that this is the foundation on which we built the Bowtie Dialogue Kit. There is a clear reference from Bowtie risk assessments we've done to the way the board looks today, and you'll see the board later. Yeah. So what's it good for? Oh, I forgot this one. It's very real. Yeah, Ulrich, that's your example. That's actually your tire from a ski vacation. Yeah. Even the pros make mistakes.
It's just to highlight the fact that sometimes seeing the world through a different paradigm can be a hugely rewarding experience. We've had that in groups where they look at things that they think they do very well. Like in my case, I've rented cars in many places around the world, but I still fail to realize that renting, cars in Italy to go on skiing vacation does require me to do an extra vehicle inspection, which I did not. And I stand, duly corrected on that one. But the trick is that the two sides of the loss of control really brings about new types of dialogue, okay? And perhaps we can get into that one a little bit later if time permits.
Yeah. The next here is just to give you a brief overview of what are the strengths of using the Bowtie methodology for working with risk assessment. It allows you to have structured thinking and make risk-based decisions, which you can say about other risk assessment methodologies as well. Whereas the really big strength in Bowtie is the visualization of the risks and the barriers, and where they're placed and what they do for us, and which is really supports the communication and training of the whole view of risk management in an organization, in the office as well as in operations. And it's easy to understand. I've used it for boardrooms as well as operators at the end. So it works very well equally across the organization. It also allows you to monitor your barrier performance, because your barriers are so explicitly illustrated. And especially if you use the Bowtie XP, it gives you direct input. And it's actually also what we do here with the Bowtie Dialogue Kit is we monitor the barrier performance. Once we've produced, before we start the operation, we produce the risk assessment. We can use the Bowtie Dialogue Kit, the BDK as we call it sometimes, to monitor how we actually doing real time, 1, 2 weeks or months into the project. And we can repeat that process with the respective stakeholders that are actually working for us and with us at the time. So that's the strength of the combination here. Yeah. Next one here is, see if I do have a delay, I apologize. But the next one we're going to talk about is how do, what is your need? So when you consider using the Bowtie Dialogue Kit, you need to consider what is your need. If your need is to have your risk assessment produced, then it's CGE for the software or consultants in combination to actually have your detailed hardcore risk assessments done. If your need is that you've done that already, you know your risks, and you want to bring them alive into your teams and your projects and with your contractors, vendors, then that's where the BDK has its meaning, and that's what it's built for. Of course, you can also do the combination of first produce a designated risk, Bowtie diagram, and use that on the board. But our strength and what we made this for is for the interaction with humans and bringing it alive, because we've seen it so many times that you've done all this work to identify your risks and identify your mitigating actions. And what happens then once you start operation? Do you actually, is it working? How well is it working? Are people understanding it? Is it being used by the day-to-day leaders on the site? So that's the point of the BDK, as well as a lot of other things. Yeah, next one. Is as Ulrik mentioned before, these are illustrations of what we've done before. So we've had these interactions about risk management, risk assessment in many different contexts over many years now. And our efforts here have been, we've been there, we've been asked back, we have long-term relations with most of our clients, both of us, for working with this. We wanted to bring that together in a simple tool so you can also do it when we're not there. Facilitated by us maybe sometimes, but still this is easy to go, especially the like on-site handy version, but also what you'll see today in the online Lite version, you'll hopefully see that, yeah, we can use this too in our own organization by ourselves. Yeah, so the reason why we created this was to bring our experience together and into something that would create meaningful and action-causing conversation. So, and on topics of greatest opportunity to strengthen your effort right now. So it can be at the beginning when planning a project or production, or it can be all the way through. So it can be repeated again and again, and every time you repeat it, you'll end up talking about something, some different topics, depending on what's most important right now, and for the people in the room, and what their perception of the strength of your barriers are. And by that, I think it's time to bring back to you, Ulrik. Yeah,
sure. Absolutely.
I'll hand you back your control.
Thank you. So Lisbeth here covered some of the principles of the Bowtie. You've got an idea about the power of the model, and it's now my job to talk a little bit about If it's that good, why considering a game factor to create the good dialogues around it? And I'll do that by just a single short slide, then referencing a little material that made, at least feel comfortable for Jack because it comes out of the UK. And then we're going to have a little bit of look about what's actually inside the box, okay? So first, the board game format. Again, it's not a game, but it takes everything that a game does good and then expands upon it. So let me highlight these fairly quickly. A game is a structured way to get real results. You open up a box, and here's a rule book, and we start at number 1. We'll set up the game. We'll go through some processes, and we'll have a fun time at the end. You're in a comfortable, safe zone from start to finish. That helps a lot to structure the dialogue, okay? So it's an effective way. Now, a game would just end up with a winner. A real important part to the Bowtie Dialogue Kit is that you end up collectively of identifying some projects, some mini exercises that you do together. More on that a little bit later. In a game, people tend to follow the rules, meaning that you create an environment where it's easy for everybody to help each other stick with the time, okay? If it says you can discuss this for only 3 minutes, then there's not one person who can monopolize that by speaking over by 15 minutes, okay? So you create a level playing field that is actually countering to normal biases, okay? If it says, speak your heart, then people will speak their heart, whether they are the CEO or the mechanic. So there's a lot of biases that we can take away if we systemize or we distill the dialogue into a game. The little parentheses here about vid, it just indicates that if a little bit of luck, we can get Lisbeth to talk about it later on in one of the videos, because this aspect of creating an equal field where everybody can speak their mind is actually critical important for our risk work. I'm almost certain that you've been in the meeting where the old hand said that that's not a problem, or it will always go like that. And then suddenly everybody who had an opinion about it were just quiet. But if the game rule says that everybody has to have an opinion, then suddenly everybody will have. And those are some of the things that we're tapping into. It's also critical important that it is a same time, same place, full read of body language, which is why I asked you to flip on the cameras. If you saw the smile crossing Job's face just 15 seconds ago, as I was talking about biases, that is what we're looking for, okay? Those camera matters when we're in a virtual space. And it is very important, as soon as we possibly can, to get our teams back out and do something together. Because trust comes from doing things together. And playing a game or doing this more advanced dialogue kit could be a very effective way of doing it, okay? And the important part is that it is in real time. If people are struggling with something, I can see how it looks on their face. If they're happy about something, I can see it on their face as well. And I can figure out how their body looks if they're uncomfortable. And all those things create good teams. In particular, important if we're working across normal barriers or across normal boundaries for our organizations. So real time is important. It's also relevant that if I open up the box, okay, and here I'm holding up the box if I can, okay, and I'll take out some of the things that are inside of it, okay, and there's a whole, piece of plastic, and I know I can see that it's not nice for the microphones, and I apologize for that, but I will bring them out because having these things, the big dice and stuff like this, okay, big dice or large tokens that every finger sizes can grab is also helpful for some persons that really don't want to sit down and read an article, but they want to do something. They want to move things around. They want to simulate the real world, okay? So you're satisfying more learning styles by also adding that physicality to the dialogue. Yes, you can give them pen and paper, but give them a little thing for the fingers as well. And now we have more brains hooked into the conversation. There's also this aspect of, as we are in real time, one idea leads to a next. When we look back and we find out what really worked, it's typically the second or third iteration of an idea. Somebody came up with an experiment. somebody else added to it, and a third person rounded it off into something that was just not just the good idea, but also operational. So being there together around the board game is actually a good way from one idea to grow into something that is actually usable. Again, that happens in real time. And finally, it's also a repeated cost-effective way as a team building exercise. The nice thing about these board pieces that you'll see is that they're made out of very thick plastic, okay? They're very sturdy. You can spill coffee on them and they will be available for you next time as well. So it's something that you can bring out whenever you need to have a good activity with your team. So it's not just for fun and games. It is fun and it has similarities with the game. But more importantly, it creates an environment where people can follow simple rules that will take away the hierarchy and allow everybody a voice. I'll repeat that. Allow everybody a voice. That is one of the important parts of the game. And I'll just give you one example in a short minute, okay? So these are all the good arguments and all the good reasons. And if in doubt, then when we get to the Q&A, I will give you some examples from other very large organizations. Vattenfall would be one of them. Nestle would be other, where the game processes have proven to be effective to open up for specific types of dialogues. If you don't trust that, then trust the research. And this is where I return to the UK, and some very amazing research has been done by Cranfield University. They're the premier organization inside the PMI, the project management methodology. And they've looked at project-based organizations, so-called PBOs. And what they found is that an organization can get from level 1 to level 3, where 5 is world-class and 1 is really, really poor. You can get to level 3 by systems. If you want to get beyond that to have a real competitive advantage, you need to look at your people. You need to find a way to make your people work together, make the people do things that creates relations, that creates bonds, that makes them more behavioral, happy to work together as a team. Now, if that sounds a little bit familiar, of course, it's because what we also have seen from the oil and gas industry in terms of the cultural ladder, that if we want people to move up and we want to create a proactive or a generative organization where people are doing it, not because they have to, but because they understand intuitively that is the right thing to do, then we're looking at also getting out into the human factor. And here is where time, where people spent together doing meaningful things, is actually critical important. And here we're not just talking about getting their project sheets done, but also having the broader discussion, the dialogue that things like the Bowtie Dialogue Kit can facilitate. So if we open up the box, this is what you're going to find in there. There's the big board game, and I really mean that very big, because you put it together by 9 of these pieces, okay? So, I mean, I wouldn't even fit in the camera if I were to assemble it. So it's fairly large, fitting between a group of people. There's a lot of the small dice and tokens and small blocks in there as well that we use to vote and we use to prioritize. It's not like I'm red and you're yellow, because everything happens collectively. We're always helping each other out, okay? But we just use them to indicate which part of the board do we want to focus on. And I'll give you some examples in a second. There's also inside the box, and I'm just opening it up here so I can hold it up. There's a whole little stack of extra cards that you bring out whenever you need a little bit of extra inspiration. So as you get to an item, that one will have further details. And very importantly, we have these action sheets that looks like this. This one is actually filled out. A Bowtie Dialogue Kit session typically results in 3 to 4 mini experiments or mini projects that the players decide to do between now and next time they meet. They're not big projects. They don't require separate funding. They're just small things that they decide together to go out and do differently to support the overall safety of the project. So the surrounding materials with the tokens and the cards, et cetera, are all designed for that one thing, single thing, is that it doesn't stop during the hour that you spent together around the board. That hour is catalytic for them to decide on doing new things together. And this is where the value is. They can, in paper format, they can sign it at the bottom and say, let's go out and do it, okay? So it is this from good ideas, crystallizing it into something solid, and then turning it into action. That's the real relevance and the real reason why the Bowtie Kit has been so effective, okay? So here's all the rules that you need. And I know that is a little bit crowded, okay? So let me repeat that you don't need to know them right now. Just know that all the rules can literally fit into one single slide as you play the game. However, I do want to talk a little bit about the voting, because that is important. And the way I'll do that is just by playing a very short, about 60-second video from the material that's also available to you online. So here, forgive me, this is actually me just highlighting a little detail. If you look at the video, you can see, I'm assuming that we have 4 players in each corner. They have placed some yellow tokens, which is the area that they want to investigate, okay? So out of the many things that they could, these were the most important ones, and they found out about which ones they were using the blue blocks, okay? We'll pick that one up when we meet. But right now, they need to determine something that is critically important, which is their shared readiness. Meaning, not if I'm ready or you're ready, but as a team, how ready are we, okay? And it actually looks like this. If I can...
How ready do we feel we are, okay? And if I were to determine how well are we as a group ready to deal with nonconformance and incidents, everybody who's part of the dialogue will take their voting dice, and then in secret, they would sort of put the number towards the top that they think represents how we are together. Cover it as they move it onto the board, and then simultaneously reveal the number. And in
okay, I'm stopping the video there. Now, I know it sounds just like a trivial detail, but this is where we capture the knowledge in the room. By having the different expertises reveal their vote at the same time, maybe we end up with something where there's a lot of people who are voting 4 and 5, okay? So this is the vote, but I'm interested in the person who came up with a 1. That's the outlier that we have to hear from. If they're all in agreement and saying it's around 4, then the conversation is, how can we get it better? But every once in a while, you will have a situation where one of the people has a different opinion, and that's the one that we want to catch, okay? So this is just an example of some of those mechanics that's built into the dialogue kit that is specifically designed to take away biases, to take away those barriers for normal conversation. That means that the meeker voices, I didn't say weak, I said meek, that some of the meeker voices are perhaps not being heard, okay? Now, an idea about how the whole thing works. Here's the board in all its beauty. If you look sort of like down on the bottom, even on your small screens, can you see that it's designed to identify blind spots? Can you read that, Jack? Is that readable? Okay, cool. Yep. You don't have to read anything else, but on one side of the board, you can see these are the objectives. We want to find the blind spot that we collectively have not discovered. The people sitting on the other side of the board, they have the rules, okay? So from their perspective, they can see that the threats are in blue on the left and the potential consequences are in red on the right, okay? You can see there's a one-on-one correspondence back into Lisbeth's introduction to the bow tie right here. So the threats on the left in blue and the consequences on the right in red. If we sort of flip it around just a little bit again, you can see we group them into legacy. What do we bring into the project? People, the human factor, how qualified are we and how good is the leadership? Technical, is this territory that we know? Have we used this machinery before? has this production line, or have we ever opened an airport after Corona before? Okay, is this unknown territory? And what do we do with quality? And then out into the environment, which is not just taking care of the bats, but it is also the planned environment, as in concurrent work and time pressure up towards the very end. And here you can see the different barriers that is available to discuss immediately. And if you can, then maybe also see that there's always an empty number 3, okay? So P3, T3, E3 is blank, meaning that any kind of dialogue should be open for whatever it is that is suddenly relevant popping out inside the room. And of course, on the very other side, we also look at the potential consequences. What could possibly happen if these things go wrong? So we have the complete bow tie covered here on the board, and we have the processes around them that allows us to spend 60 to 90 minutes identifying where we collectively foresee the biggest pain. We have the cards that will open up the discussion, and as a conclusion, we will write out together the activities that will allow us to look at this in a different way and overall add to the safety of the project. So I know it's a little overwhelming, and you're seeing now in 2 dimensions what was originally designed for a full-fledged in-the-room experience, but you need to see that as well. So I got to stop here and say right now we need to hear from the reactions from the clients. And on that note, I'll hand it back to you, Lisbeth, to show us how it has worked out there in the real world as well. Yes. So with a little bit of luck, you should have the controls back to you right now.
I think it's there. Yeah. So I'm going to show you some photos here of, let me see if I get that. Oh, here. Photos from real life, well, tests, but also just delivering and facilitating workshops with clients in different locations, different countries. So that's what it looks like. And you see the first picture, they're actually assembling the board, which is a nice icebreaker. Here you'll see a project management team actually between them discussing how are we collectively doing. Right now they're putting out the blue blocks, so they're in the process of prioritizing the threats that they want to talk about. Here you see they're discussing after they voted, they would have had maybe a 1 here and a 5 here, and what's the difference? What do you see that I don't see? How come there is a gap there between our different perceptions? Here they're in the process of, you saw in the video of just before they show their hands, so to speak. Here they're discussing why they should prioritize as they should. They're looking at, well, here we have 3 big heaps of blue blocks, so we should probably focus on these 3 threats, whereas this one is not so intensive for us. Here they're going into describing, they're discussing, transferring it into actions that they want to do together. And that's probably more or less it. Here you would have Ulrich for some reason shouting to a room. And I think, but that's also the reaction is it's fun to be there. Maybe he's trying to get their attention because it's not really working. They're really deep into it.
I'll add to the fact here that as I was trying to get the attention back because they were in such good dialogue, at one point Lisbeth had to reach over and actually grab the dice because we needed their attention. So
yes,
everything is there. Cool.
Next one. Let me see if I can actually manage to get there.
Yeah, perfect.
Here is a video of what it sounds like and looks like when it's actually deployed in a room of a project team. Hang on, I need to find the button. Yeah.
Do we just do that?
Notice that everyone's engaged, and that's not just a one-off. This is what happens. You can have up to 6 people around the table working with one board physically. In the kit there is each kit has equipped for 6 people. So that was it for no, there's one more.
Should we just do that?
Hang on. This one is with a different client, and what you'll notice here is that you'll have the CEO on the left side here and a technician on the right side here, and looking at how that engagement is, and that also not a one-off. This is what happens when you put them into the game, to the board here, as Ulrik has explained before.
Det er bare svært. Når du først har klippet, så er der point of no return.
Ja, men når du begynder at samle,
Jo,
jeg fik det at vide, så var det et eller andet med, at vi havde
byttet nogle
samlet
That's the CEO.
Jeg forstår heller ikke, hvorfor man ikke har haft det. Jeg ved, nu har jeg ikke været inde i det, men det undrer mig meget, som 20 års erfaring som kønsingeniør, der undrer det mig så meget, at man ikke har haft nogle punkter, hvor man har tjekket.
And then we have one more where the CEO actually reflects on what did this do for them.
Jeg synes, det var utrolig sjovt at arbejde med spillet, og en rigtig god måde, hvor man får åbnet op for drøftelserne, i stedet for at fokusere på, hvad der kan gå galt. Så kom vi meget dybere ind om nogle ting omkring, hvad er det, der gør, at situationerne opstår. Og det var helt nyt for mig, og rigtig både sjovt og lærerigt. Noget af det, som der kom frem, det var jo meget tydeligere, end jeg havde regnet med. Det er den sammenhæng, der er mellem kvaliteten i vores arbejde og planlægningen af vores arbejde, hvordan det spiller direkte igennem på arbejdsmiljøet. Og det var jeg godt klar over var tilfældet, men det blev meget tydeligt her, og jeg tror også, det blev meget tydeligt for dem, der deltog i diskussionerne.
And Louise here is bringing out really one of the points that we kind of struggled with when we were developing this, that people we were engaging with wanted to focus on safety and behavior, but it really includes everything in that you do in a project or in a production, because it's all related, and it's impossible to just restrain yourself to just talking about safety or just talking about one of the aspects, because it's so interrelated. And you take away great opportunities for learning and catching the outliers in any ways if you want to control people's mind to just one aspect of what you're doing. Yeah, and I think it's time to then digest that, Ulrik. Yeah.
Absolutely. I appreciate also the I hope you had a chance to sort of read the English subtitles to what it was Louise was saying, because it really highlights some of the things that, or evidence of some of the things that Lisbeth has been talking about. We want to digest, so for that purpose, I'm going to jump over into Mentimeter very quickly. So I will share that window out instead here. And as I do that, you should be able to, with a little bit of luck, hit your smartphone. It may have fallen to sleep, but you see the same guy sitting with the back to you. And we're interested in what are your thoughts right now? Is there any place where you say this is relevant? Is there a big question? Do you see an immediate application in a particular situation? Do you wonder whether you can put your logo on the board? All those things. But if there's anything that you want to sort of give back to us right now before the break, then please do so right now. The comments are anonymous, so if you want to have a name on there, just put that in at the end, and we will share some of those things very quickly, and then we'll have a break afterwards. But if I can ask you to now look down into your own device or into your own secondary browser, and then give us your thoughts as to where we are right now. There we go. Perfect. Oh, I'll remove the image here. Okay, thank you. We're hearing here that it's interesting and worth following up with further. Do appreciate it. Interesting as well. Here, Heidi owns the comment. Excellent and interesting. Thank you, Heidi. That's very kind of you. Hopefully it'll find good use. A nice way to systematically invite minority views. I don't know who wrote this, but this is exactly one of the reasons. We need all voices to be heard if we are to stay safe. This is exactly why we're doing it. Thank you. Great tool. How to ensure that no information is lost? And will it also work in a non-Danish, very hierarchical culture? The two questions are separate. First, some of the feedback comes out on paper, and that can get very easily lost. So if allowed, we are taking pictures, and we recommend the facilitator to take pictures at the end. We like that when we're live in the room that it actually happens with pen on paper. That makes more of a collective exercise. So we have a afterburner or a post process that does that capture, all in due compliance with GDPR. We can elaborate on that a little bit later. Will it work in non-Danish, very hierarchical cultures? So far, we have had a different version tested out, and the answer is yes, because cultures do play. And that is really the interesting part about it, is if we take this into a Chinese context, the only thing you have to realize is that they're very fiercely competitive. So you have to be very careful about explaining that it's not a single winner, but the objective is to create some projects that we can do together. So you have to tailor it a little bit, but it most certainly works. And do you have any additions to this, Lisbeth?
No, so good.
Yeah. Then there's a final comment says that it looks interesting. We want to see how it can work in remote locations. I think that is a good closing remark, because I'm now going to jump back into the slide deck. Thank you for your feedback so far. We're almost there, but we need a brief break, and then we will exactly return here and discuss what do we do in these Corona times. And we will give you a live demo of how the Lite version works. We'll show you some simulations about how the full edition works as well. So we'll answer that question in the next 20 minutes or so. But first, we need to stand up, we need to stretch, we need fresh coffee, and we probably need a little bit more time than just 2:05. So let's be back here at 2:10, please, okay? So as said, Lisbeth and I were looking forward to travel the world with a really, really nice and complete process. And then Corona told us we can't, okay? I went through Schiphol the week before last, and I was sitting alone in the restaurant sharing a cold sandwich with a rat. There was nothing open. Travel is not fun these days, okay? So we need to deliver it in a different way. And we're going to start with showing you some examples, again, using Mentimeter. So imagine that you are perhaps the package manager, or you run a complex project, and you, at least for the first time, have decided to use this and had an intense dialogue with Lisbeth. Lisbeth has been interviewing you in terms of where does it hurt the most. You have probably looked at the board together in a blown up digital version to, again, find out whether or not we're looking at the right things. At the end, you have selected the most important topics, okay? So in the Lite version, we are doing something on a one-on-one or one-on-two to prepare for a larger group, okay? That happens more with everybody in the room in the simulated version, but right here, that is pre-cooked. On the other hand, we then move into some very deep examples inside Mentimeter. So let me take you over there by showing this screen, and then if you will be ready now on your smart device or on your secondary browser. This is where we left off from before. So I will go in and show you some of the Lite engagements. This is the first one. Remember the board itself. It had, it looked, sorry, didn't want to move here. The board has these high level areas, whether it is legacy, people, technical, or environment. Inside your browser or where you are now, okay, I'm showing it on my iPad, you have to select the options in matter of priority, okay? So out of legacy, people, technical, environment, what is most important to you? You select the first version, or the most important one, then you select the second most important one. And if I can ask you to, before you're hitting submit, okay, as you fill out this one, then please, as you are ready, before hitting submit, then look up. Because if I hit submit right here, you can see the bars on my screen when you look up, they actually move in much the same way as you would see the closing screen on a European Song Contest, okay? So try to select the right priority for you. What do you think is most important? Is it people? Is it environment? Is it legacy? And is it technical? And then as you close up on your device, then hit submit. And as you hit submit, look up on our shared screen because you can see that moves around the bars, okay? So I'll be quiet as you contemplate and you then throw this off. To me, it looks like only 2 people have answered so far. And I would hope.
Can we have the code again, please?
Sorry? Oh.
Have the Mentimeter code again, please?
Perfect. There we go. 2805348. 2805348. Or use the QR code. Thank you for asking, Niels. I should have checked that it was still available. I apologize for that. Good? Excellent. That should bring most of us back in there. Cool. Okay. So now we can see that more people have voted. We're still only at 3, but I really would like for everybody to engage right now because we're going to go through some examples of how we do this, okay? Now we're talking, okay? Essentially, right now, anonymously, we're prioritizing together, okay? So we can clearly see that legacy and technical are the least interesting topics for us to discuss right now as a group. We have collectively all placed the people and the emerging cultures and insufficient culture of communication as the most important one, okay? Again, we don't have to discuss the spin-off effects of this right now. We just want to show you some of the ways that we can engage. So this is the board, and what we just did was we chose between legacy, people, technical, and environment. In other words, we started to add the focus. That is important that we do that fairly anonymously and in a structured way. And we have 4 different ways in there of which we just show you one, okay? What happens now is that we will pretend that we have selected P5 as culture, okay? We did that online and we're now ready to try it out. And here comes some new ways of engaging collectively here. So everybody keep your smartphones ready, because this is our first barrier discussions. Thank you for the hearts as well. If we had a longer session, I would encourage you to keep on clicking on those. It's sort of like making sure that you're awake, and it gives me an indication that we're all on the right screen. There we go. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So here's another question. To which extent between hardly at all and fully and completely aligned have we worked across cultures before? Do we understand each other's cultures? Do we understand our own culture? And are we ready to change our own culture? So here you can drag the circle across, the blue, the green, or the yellow, or you can just click on where you find it's appropriate on the scale and then hit submit at the very end, okay? So if I can ask you to do right now, then you will see again that the chart is dynamically updated as we cast our votes, okay? So if I can ask you to do right now, 2 of you have done it, but if I can ask everybody to come in there as well, okay. Now this is the replacement of people raising their hands in the room. And just to give you an idea about what the value is, that I can hover over the votes. And I can see out of the 4 votes we have so far, oh, now we're up to 5. That's excellent. So the average is 3.8. It's still 3.8, but you can see there's 2 who voted a 5. There's 2 who voted a 2 and a 1 and a 1 and a 0. In other words, by looking at the curve of the hill behind the value, I get more insight. And this is interesting because here we have a curve where we're sort of like split. There's 3 who are understanding their own culture, but there's also 2 who say, I'm actually not sure I understand my own culture. And that's a way of discovering your project partner who has only been with his or her organization for the last 2 months. And that is another risk that we have to realize, that we're talking to somebody who's representing a larger dynamic that will eat our strategy for breakfast unless we discover it, okay? This one at the very end is also critically important, that we can see that there's actually now a majority of people who think that we're not ready to change our own culture for a new and better, okay? So just looking at these diagrams actually gives us something to talk about, that a lot of us has worked across cultures, but there's also some of us who are new to the cultures that we're in and are not ready to change. That should give us something to talk about, which we won't do today because this is just a demo, okay? I can see, Joop, you were just about to open your mouth, but I have to continue my demonstration here, okay. This now is another way that is critically important also for qualifying risk. The way you read this diagram is, how is our shared, not mine, not Lisbeth's, not Christopher's, but as a team, how is our shared motivation and capability, skill and will, to respect others' cultures, to work across other cultures, and to resolve cultural issues, okay? And here, if you look at my screen, you can see there's now 2 balls or 2 circles for each of the colors, meaning that I need to select both my skill level and my will level for that particular item. So how do I look collectively across lists? How do I think our shared respect is? How do I think our shared ability to work across, et cetera, et cetera? Can I ask you to highlight that one very quickly? That would be very, very nice, okay? So again, drop in your values and we'll have a look at what it comes into, okay? So there we are. I know there's a lot to consider, but if I can ask you to do it as well, I will highlight one thing that you will immediately recognize that also being very important for risk assessment, okay? So 5 of you have voted. I'm not sure we can get it all the way up to 6, but with a little bit of luck, we should be able to. Okay. Anyway, now notice that we have some averages, okay? Number 1, respect. We have high skill, but not as much will as we have of working, okay? So the skill to work and respect is about the same, but the will is a little greater to work than it is to respect. So we have something here. We can also see culturally, we realize we may not be as capable as we are in the other areas. Sorry, Lisbeth?
Yeah, there's a question. Who's the we in this context?
Perfect. Now, if I was running it with 4 subcontractors on a package, it would be us sitting in the room. So I'm actually using this to catch the outliers. And very particular, notice how I can hover over one value and I can now see the variance. And you can see this one was all over the place. I'm interested in saying, who's the one who is super happy to do it but doesn't have the skill? Okay, that would be the one in the upper left-hand corner. But I would also want to talk to the person who's very, very capable but doesn't want to do it, okay? So I'm using this to open up the conversation. Now, I'm not doing it to find the individual, but I'm asking openly. In this group, what is it with us that leads us to believe we have a high skill? Let's talk about that. But in the other area, what leads us to say that we're actually lacking of skill? What could that be? Now, there may be a person who will volunteer saying that was actually me, but it's not necessary. You can still have good conversations. Because here in item number 2, you can see there's a big difference between whether we can or we will, and I need to find those things, okay? As we get to the resolving, you can see we all agree that we don't have a whole lot of skill. There's nobody here who thinks we're fantastic, but we do vary quite a bit in terms of how willing we are. Now, would this also be effective for risk analysis? Absolutely it would. We're just showing it to you right now in terms of how can we create some pieces of information that really leads to some deep conversations. We could also ask you to take 100 people and divide them into how many would be considering HSE as the way we do business, as opposed to how many would not care at all as long as the job get done. So you're giving 100 imaginary people from your organization, and now you have to put them in there. And as you start placing people in different ends of the scale, you can see you only have so many left, okay? And again, this here would be a way of tapping into figuring out collectively, if we were 400 people in the room, where do we think we would be on the cultural ladder, okay? Now, I know only a few of you have had the time to vote, but I do want to continue for time purposes because we just wanted to show you how do we create good engagement as we work online. As it comes from this, we would then ask people to come with their shared findings. What specific action or simple experiments will make a difference giving these things that we just saw, okay? Probably not with 3 votes and then 1 input, but normally 1 vote and then some input, 1 vote and then some input. As we work with that, we would then have breakout dialogues where we can take people up and we can put them into separate rooms. It depends a little bit on the platform, what we're allowed to do. Teams is catching up here with a big release in or in the 3rd quarter, probably late October. But right now we can do it in Zoom. We can do it in some of the other applications as well. But we typically have breakout dialogues where people can talk and then they write back inside a whiteboard, okay? Meaning that we will leave a larger whiteboard open. And I'm just going to show you the whiteboard here where people can then come in and say, my group over here, okay? So my group found this. And we could have an area down here for another group who happens to like painting and so on, okay? So we can have large whiteboards available as part of the communication as well. We can have them pre-populated with boxes you can write in, et cetera, et cetera. These things are part of the online experience once more, okay? So in this, we move a little bit back and forth in the tools. Now we should be back into the Mentimeter slide. And we will then catch from the shared material, we will then have an opportunity to go in and give sort of a digital signature where I could come in and say, yes, Ulrich Ramsing. I can give this as a vote saying that this is actually one of those things where I believe that we can strengthen the managing cultures by, and then we would type in the listed initiative, okay? So I know it's a little bit rushed here towards the end, but I think you have a good idea about the way that we can engage differently, okay? So on that note, I have one question left for you. If I can ask you to tell me, what is your energy level? Are you ready for the conclusion? Or are you all done and we need to wrap up quickly, okay? So select an option and hit submit. I need to see where we are, and then we will wrap it up accordingly, okay? We still have 3 who are ready for the finals. And with a little bit of luck, we can have 1 or 2 more votes. Okay, fine, just keep it going. Thank you. There we have the remaining. Excellent, all 7 have voted. Do appreciate it. Good. With that, let's jump back and wrap it up inside the slides. So let me go here. There we are. You said you had a little bit of energy left. So what we have shown you right now was option number 1. That is the one where we use Mentimeter and other tools, whiteboards, to create a new perspectives into those undiscovered differences. If you were to go not with the Lite version, but with the slightly more elaborate version, then we have a full online simulation where we actually have taken the game and placed it in a virtual space, sort of like on a very, very large surface. Okay, that is what you're seeing here. And we've added some extra pieces, and I know it looks a little bit fishy or a little bit weird that there's a meeting room seen from above. But the first thing we do if we have full day simulations is that we actually sit down together. You can see here it's me, Rikke, Lisbeth, and Anders. And we sit down, we fill out our name tag, we put in our pictures, we talk a little bit about who's in the room, okay? In order to connect for the kind of dialogue that we have. Then, of course, we use the full board. You can see here are some of the blue blocks that are simulated, the ones that I hold up in the camera. You can see those are now available online. And we literally move them around. In this case, I'm player A and Lisbeth is number C, John was Z, et cetera, and we can then move simulated tokens onto the board. We can move the voting dice onto the board, and that is where we can have a true discovery as if we were in the same room. I know it sounds a little bit cryptical, but the ability to actually see together as we fill out the action sheets, as we write stuff together, and also as we go in and sign them online, makes it a surprisingly real experience. I will say, though, that this is for the more complex topics and a little bit digitally experienced audience, okay? We want to make sure that we have some pre-runs if people have not tried this before. You don't jump into this room right away, but if this is what is right for your challenge, then we would have some test runs where people become familiar with this way of working first. But again, there's two options available. There's the Lite that you already tried inside Mentimeter and that worked well. And there's also a little bit more elaborate one that we have here as a full-fledged simulation. And of course, you may be allowed in your country or in your plant still to meet with colleagues. And if you want that, then please, by all means, grab the whole box, okay? I made a mess of mine, but this is how it looks, okay? So it's all here. It ships well. It's sturdy plastic. It can reach you very quickly. As said, you're more than welcome to go and order online right now, but actually talk to Lisbeth first. Get the conversation about whether it really is right for you. Also, because everything is created on demand. So if you want your logo on there, it's not a big deal, okay? So things can be branded very easy for it to become your process. That's really how we work with consultants. So they get part of it as well as they take these tools out into the field, okay? So have the conversation first, and then we'll make sure that you get the physical version as well. That's what we wanted to talk about. Time is up, so we have to close up with questions and brief calls to action. What we did is we wrapped all this up inside the Bowtie Dialogue Kit. That's the website. There's me on there. I will open up the box. I'm not going to click it on it right now, but you can see the content. There's actually a 20-minute video on there also for partners. So you get a full understanding of the game. And if you want to have a look at that, you're, of course, more than welcome.
Hi.
What we tried to cover here was very much that there's a bow tie that works. There's good reasons for working with a game-like metaphor, but this is more than a game because there's the action sheets that comes out of it. There's three options right now. There's the online version, there's a simulation, and there's obviously we can ship and we can then play locally. And regardless, we're here to help. We have been sidetracked by Corona, but we also have a way of coming out across regardless. So it's very much available right now. Now time is up, and I will, of course, leave the last word to Lisbeth. But if you need more questions, or if you have any questions, you want to hang on here, neither Lisbeth nor myself are in a hurry to come out of it here. But for those of you who had time until 2:30 Central European Standard Summertime, then we owe it to you to finish it. So I'll leave it with you right now, Lisbeth, for the closing words.
Well, I think I just want to say thank you very much to everyone here. We hope we inspired you and see the use. If you do have like a comment on, yeah, I see, this is what I noticed, this is what I really appreciated in this, or this is what I would like to mention before you leave, that would be very nice of you to leave it in the chat. So, and as Ulrik said, always welcome to come back. Call us, email, or look for the website. And thanks for joining.
Perfect.
I think that's it.
Thank you. Now we're a small group. Heidi, Martian, Christopher, Niels, any questions before we leave? Anything that we can do to help you?
Nothing from my side. You've explained, what it is very, very clearly, and thank you very much for that. It's now a question of digesting it all and and then coming back to you with the questions, I think, rather than something off the top of my head.
Please, sounds wise and a good way and a fine step forward. Thank you. And also thank you for your comment, Heidi, in the chat window. Greatly appreciate it. Okay?
Yeah.
If nothing else, then we will close the session. We'll stop the recording and we'll tell you where to find it in a mail in the not too distant future. And then hopefully we can help you by having smarter dialogues on safety out there. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
And here we are. Okay. Do you want me to is it easier if I just close it down or any closing comments? There we go.
Så kan vi alene.
Why don't I stop regardless, and then we can just pick up the phone, because then this is a good place to start the recording. Okay. So I'll stop this and I will end this. Thank you.